My 22-year-old daughter mysteriously vanished almost 18 months ago. Today, we are not a whole lot closer to answers about what happened, where she went, where she is right now. The last thing that she said to me was, "I love you so much more." I've had a lot of requests recently for the full story, all the sordid details. I used to tell the story once a week, and then I realized that doing so was re-traumatizing. So I've stepped back from that. But I'm going to do it today. I am Jennifer Santanello. Layla Santanello is my only daughter. If she were here, she would be 22. There was a lot going on when she vanished. Just a few months earlier, I had learned that she was using certain substances and struggling with substance abuse. Just like a month earlier, she and I were in court because I had applied for temporary custody of her daughter, who was 2 at the time. In fact, the day after she went missing, we had a court date scheduled that she obviously didn't make it to. On Friday, June 23rd of 2023, Layla, who was staying with her boyfriend, who lived with his mother and his brother, had an argument. I don't know if it was with her boyfriend, his name is Michael, or with another family member. I've heard different stories about the argument. It was like a big blowout, and she packed her stuff and she left. On Saturday, June 24th of 2023, around 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I was fixing supper when I got a text message from Layla's account on the book face. But it wasn't Layla. It was Michael, and he was looking for her. The thing about that gets confusing is people don't realize that Michael and Layla were sharing a phone because a few months earlier, Michael had been arrested and he had Layla's phone on him. And he had left his phone with her back at the house because he didn't have any minutes or internet or anything on his phone. You could only use it with the Wi-Fi. So he took Layla's phone, which was paid for every month by my mother, and went out and did whatever he did, got himself arrested, and the phone was taken in as evidence. So for a few months, the two of them were sharing a phone. So me getting a message from Michael on Layla's account wasn't something that was weird. It happened a lot. He would message me from Layla's account, or Layla would message me from his account, because they just used whatever account was pulled up at the moment to communicate with me. Anyway, Saturday night, I'm cooking dinner. I get a message from Michael, and it just says, "Do you know if Layla is in jail?" I have questions. Why would she be in jail? Why is she not with you? These two were connected at the hip. You never saw one without the other. They had serious, codependency issues. I started to panic. At the time all of this was happening, my niece was living downstairs in my basement. She also struggles with substance use. She was clean at the time. I had helped her detox a couple months earlier. Moved her into my basement with the idea that we would get her moved out and into sober living. It didn't happen. That's a whole other story. But she was clean and in my basement at this time. So I went downstairs and I showed her the text message and I was like, "Can you look on your jail app thing?" She has an app where she can see who's been locked. I don't know. And then call around, see if you can find Layla, because she dealt with a lot of people that my daughter was dealing with. We couldn't find her. Not in jails, not in hospitals, not with friends. Sometime Saturday night she messaged me, but I had gone to bed. I woke up to her message Sunday morning and I had a short conversation with her. She said she was staying with friends. She was fine. She seemed upset because I was worrying about her. She didn't want me to worry. And the very last thing she said to me was, "I love you so much more." These text messages that I got from her would later be proven to be 98% for certain from her. We know of where she was on Sunday morning and who she was with and what device she used to make the messages, and it all lines up. It was definitely 100% her. So at this point, I feel better. I figure she's going to call me at some point and tell me what's going on. She was very short. She didn't seem to want to answer my questions, but I knew that Michael could see her messages and how she was interacting with me. So I wasn't expecting her to give me a full explanation of why she wasn't with Michael. They had a very toxic, yucky relationship. And I was hoping her leaving his premises meant that she would eventually come to her senses and come home. At this point, I'm feeling good about the situation, honestly, until Monday morning rolls around. I get all of these terrifying messages from Michael, her boyfriend, and he's going on about, "You don't know the terrible things that could happen to her out here on the streets, and She doesn't need to be out there on her own, and just laying it on thick is how I took it. Like he was trying to manipulate me into finding her for him. Yes, Michael had also been in contact with Layla's biological father in New Jersey, and he was also laying it on thick, and same type of manipulation tactics. Layla's grandmother and I had been in touch all weekend about all of it. Layla's father and I had a conversation on Monday night, which would have been the 26th, and we were talking about, like, what do we do? Do we call it in? Do we make a big fuss about it? I had concerns about doing that. I was afraid that if we made a big public fuss about it, if she were hiding, she would hide better, for one. I also thought if somebody had her and we made a big public fuss, they would do something and get rid of her, if you catch my drift. I also didn't want to upset her. She and I weren't really in the best place. And I was afraid to embarrass her or to upset her. I was used to hearing from her early in the morning. She always knew that I was getting up and I was alone and could focus solely on her first thing in the morning. And that was generally when she was getting ready to lay her head down. So I said to Dad, you know, if I don't hear from her by 8 a.m. tomorrow, it'll be a full 48 hours since the last time we spoke, and then we'll call it in together tomorrow. At this time, I thought that there had to be a full 48 hours to report adult missing. That is not true. No. If the law enforcement tries to tell you that no, that's not true. No. You report immediately. Fuck if you're going to embarrass somebody. That's what I've learned. I go to bed. I had to work the next morning. Dad can't sleep. He goes ahead and he calls the station, more or less just to find out, like, do I need to wait 48 hours or can I go ahead and report this? They say, yeah, you can report it. He files the report from New Jersey, and detectives show up at her boyfriend Michael's house sometime in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m.-ish. Michael was home. So was his mother and his brother, and they all seemed very willing to cooperate and to deal with the authorities and do what they needed to do. Michael seemed concerned about Layla. At 2 o'clock in the morning on June 27th, an investigation into my daughter's disappearance had begun. The thing we didn't know is that she had not yet actually disappeared. Because what we found out later is that while her father and I were having that conversation, my daughter was at the AmeriCourt Hotel in Kingsport, Tennessee, acting crazy, acting a fool. I don't know how else to describe it or express it or explain it. She was acting a fool, acting out of her head, acting paranoid and afraid, and people tried to help her and she refused the help. At some point she was seen in the laundry room, like cowering and hiding. At some other point, law enforcement pulled into that parking lot and witnesses saw her run from the laundry room through the courtyard and into the woods behind that hotel. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, when law enforcement was questioning her boyfriend, she was in the woods behind the AmeriCourt Hotel. But we didn't know that yet. On Tuesday the 27th in the afternoon, I had a conversation with the head detective, Detective Claire, and he told me that he saw Layla on camera at the AmeriCourt Hotel the night before. So he knows for sure she was there on Monday night. At this point, he and I both believe she's still holed up at the AmeriCourt. This is Tuesday afternoon. The next morning, we had court at 9 a.m. I went to court and fully expected my daughter to show up. And when she didn't, that was the first red flag. That's not like her. Not at all. But I'm thinking maybe she's on a bender. Maybe she's hooked up with some guy and she's just too far gone to realize what day it even is. Wednesday afternoon, a witness, had given us the hotel room number that it is believed she was in on Monday night. I called my ex-boyfriend. My current boyfriend was at work. My ex-boyfriend helped me raise Layla for 7 years, so they were still very, very close. I had Nova Grace, and she was only 2 at the time, and I wasn't going up there to this seedy hotel with a 2-year-old banging on doors, you know? So I called my ex-boyfriend. I said, hey, can you go to the hotel and knock on the door of this room and see if Layla's there? Yeah, absolutely. He says, what do you want me to do if she is? And I said, well, you can try and bring her home, but if she doesn't want to come, I want you to lay eyes on her, get her some food, get her something to drink, whatever she needs. I'll send you money if you need it. whatever, make sure she eats, make sure she's hydrated, make sure she's safe. That's all I need you to do. He says, okay. He and a buddy go up to the hotel. The buddy goes up to the second floor and is banging on this door while Mike, my ex-boyfriend, is sitting in his car watching what's going on with the buddy on the second floor. He sees Michael Thompson, Layla's boyfriend, and two other individuals. Sort of the way he described it was like they came out of the shadows, as if they too had been staking out the hotel and that particular room. From what he said, Michael approached him and said, hey, I've been banging on that door all day. Nobody's answering. I had the cops down here. I tried to get somebody to break the door in. They won't do it. Then this group of 5 people spends the next 4 or 5 hours, the next however long there was daylight for, canvassing the area, more or less, talking to witnesses. There's a walking, hiking, biking trail that runs behind the AmeriCourt and into town. There's a bunch of strip malls and all kinds of shops and things that run along it. They stopped at all those places asking questions. Have you seen Layla? This, that, and the third. At some point, they all meet back up and they share what they've learned. And Michael Thompson says that Layla was seen by men at a warehouse behind the hotel, and that she was also seen at the Marble Slab Creamery by an employee. And the employee said that she was barefoot and disheveled and upset, and this person offered her, sustenance, gave her some ice cream and a drink, and gave her a safe haven for a little while before she left. When this information is relayed to me, I'm also told that Michael Thompson seemed to be not in his right state of mind at the time. My ex, Mike, says, he's out of his mind right now. He's definitely not sober. I don't know what to believe and what not to believe. And so these things this information he gave to us, we just kind of threw it away. It's useless. He is not going to tell us the truth about anything he knows. Time continues on. At this point, we're posting and trying to get attention on her and letting people in town know, hey, she's missing. If you see her, please let somebody know. We're putting up flyers. We're doing the social media stuff, and we're getting feedback. We're getting, people are giving me different tips and leads. On this particular night, I was out putting up flyers and following up on tips and leads. I was in the parking lot of a hotel with one of Layla's friends who came along with me. He didn't want me to be alone out here doing all this stuff. And we were just about to go into this particular hotel. It wasn't the AmeriCourt, it was the Travelers Inn. And I get a text message from Layla's dad's girlfriend in New Jersey. And she says, I just got a Cash App request from Layla's Cash App account. And she sends me screenshots. I immediately go straight to Cash App and I'm sending money. I'm sending $1 here, $2 there, and I'm asking questions. Layla, baby, you missed court. Where are you? Are you okay? And the person on the other end is acting like they're Layla. Mom, I just want to come home. Please send the money so I can come home. And my first initial response is, well, I need to hear your voice, sweetheart. I need to hear your voice. I'm not sending a fucking dollar until I know you're okay. Eventually, the person talking to us stopped sounding like Layla, and now they're claiming to be her kidnapper. And they're saying terrible, terrifying things. Send the money or else. Send the money or we're going to find her in pieces on the side of the road. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. We contact law enforcement, who at first doesn't take it very seriously. But when it continues for days and days, and the amount of money goes from $100 to $2,000 of worth of requests, that's when they're like, okay, we're going to try and trace this and figure this thing out. Where is this coming from? Who is messing with y'all? Does somebody actually have her? That kind of stuff. Towards the end of July, it starts to sink in for me that she's really, really, truly missing. She's not just playing around or hiding out or on a bender. She's missing, vanished. At the 30-day mark, the detective reaches out to me and says that he needs to come by and see me so that I can give him a swab of my DNA that they can put in the national database so that it can be tested against Jane Doe's nationwide. I think that's when it really hit me At that point, they had not tracked down where the cash apps were coming from either. And that's right around the same time that I really hit it hard on social media. This is the time where I was like, screw it. I created a GoFundMe, I planned a vigil, and I made my very first TikTok video about the situation. By August 3rd, Layla was considered a missing and endangered young adult. Alerts went out and the local news started doing stories on her. August 5th was her 21st birthday, and we held a candlelight vigil. Layla's father came into town to attend that vigil, and on Monday, which would have been the 7th of August, we sat down with law enforcement, and they told us everything that they knew. They did believe that Layla was seen by those warehouse workers the next morning. They believed that she slept in the woods all night long. Maybe not even slept, just maybe stayed in the woods, hiding out. She was seen getting up and coming out of the woods, crossing a football field, long field. She walked over, saw these men gathering outside of their job on their way into work. This is like 6-7 o'clock in the morning. She approaches them, tries to bum a cigarette. Nobody smokes. She's very polite. She says, "Thank you so much." She goes about her merry way, but she's walking towards the greenbelt, that walking, hiking, biking path. She doesn't turn around and go back towards the hotel. Then they tell us that they do believe she was seen at the marble slab around noon to 1 o'clock later that day. And they went with that whole marble slab theory for months. They were trying to figure out where she was between being seen that morning and later on at the marble slab. The woman who was at the marble slab had made a phone call. They were tracing that phone call. They were calling the person on the other end. That person was saying, like, "I don't know a Layla. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know Layla Santanello. I don't know what's going on." What they were able to eventually discover is that the young woman at the marble slab resembled my daughter, but she was about 5 inches taller. She was barefoot. She was wearing a white tank top and black leggings, just like my daughter. She was blonde, brown eyes, but she was a different young woman who was fleeing a DV situation and ended up on the back porch of the marble slab. They were able to corroborate this multiple different ways. Definitely wasn't Layla at the marble slab, but for like 3-4 months, we believed that she was. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out where she was. In the interim, I was begging people for camera footage, people to check their dash cams for that day, like all the things. When we were finally given the information that the marble slab was not a good sighting, it was like a gut punch. Like, it really kicked my ass, I'm not gonna lie. And then they had the audacity to be like, "You don't want the bad guys to know that we know that that's not a viable sighting, so we're gonna need you to continue saying that her last scene was the marble slab creamery." So I do. Around the same time as the vigil and all that fun stuff, the Cash App requests were traced. The address that they traced back to was none other than Layla's boyfriend, Michael Thompson's address. They believe it was his device, his Wi-Fi, his address, and that he was just trying to manipulate the situation to make some money off of us, which in and of itself is devastating and heartbreaking. They were able to obtain a warrant for that residence, and they spent, 16 to 18 hours raiding that home, collecting evidence. The entire time they were raiding the home, they had Michael in for questioning, but they didn't really get much out of him. At some point, Michael was polygraphed, but it came back inconclusive because he was using substances, and that affects all the things. So in February of 2024, Michael was indicted for the fraud and the Cash App requests and all that stuff. When he was arrested, there was a press release explaining to the public that the Marble Slab Creamery was not a viable sighting, and that Michael had been arrested, and that multiple searches had taken place. And they had, I forgot to mention that, like, in that first month, no, it was after a month, it was like 6 weeks in, they did some big grid searches along the Greenbelt, behind the AmeriCourt, And they've done some smaller searches in different areas since then. As of today, law enforcement does have a theory as far as what they believe happened to Layla, but they don't have any physical evidence to back any of it up. They don't even have the physical evidence enough to get a search warrant for certain properties that they would like to search themselves. All they have right now is hearsay and some witness statements, possible witness statements. You would be absolutely fucking shocked to know like how many people implicate themselves without ever actually being a part of a thing. I do not envy these detectives. Not in the least bit. So there it is. That's the whole story. You're welcome to leave your questions down below, and I will try to answer them as often as possible. I miss my girl. I've been here almost 18 months now, trying to share her story, her case details, her face, and let the world know that she is missing. And the longer I'm in this, the longer I'm doing this, the more I realize that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of missing persons. Actively, right now. New ones every day. And it absolutely fucking blows my mind. And I have to wonder, what's so important about my kid? What about this person's or that person's, or I don't know. It's so hard. I wish there was more I could do for people.